Everyone, welcome back. In part one, we talked about how King James V of Scotland became personally involved in witch hunting. He attended interrogations, questioned suspects himself, and eventually wrote an entire book arguing that witchcraft was real and dangerous. But that leaves us with an interesting question. Did he actually benefit from any of this? If we're talking about financial profit, probably not directly. There's no evidence that James was personally getting rich from the witch trials. But power doesn't always come in the form of money. And throughout history, fear has often been one of the fastest ways to gain influence. Think about it. When people feel threatened, they naturally look for someone who can keep them safe, make them secure. Sometimes that's a military leader, sometimes a religious leader, and sometimes it's a king. At that time, things were not particularly calm in Scotland. They were dealing with political tensions, religious divisions, economic struggles, and uncertainty about the future. People were worried, and worried people tend to look for answers. King James offered one, because according to James, witches weren't simply troublesome individuals. They were evil agents working against society. And if witches represented the threat, someone had to be the hero to stand up against that threat. And that someone was the king, inserting himself into investigations, publicly championing the fight against witchcraft. James wasn't just responding to fear, he was positioning himself as Scotland's protector, not just politically or militarily, but spiritually. And that's a powerful position for a ruler to occupy even today. Leaders gain support when they're seen as protecting the people from danger and standing on righteous ideals. The danger might be crime, terrorism, economic collapse, or even loss of national identity. The details change, but the pattern shows up again and again throughout history. People often rally behind leaders that promise safety during uncertainty, and James understood that dynamic, whether consciously or unconsciously. The witch hunts helped reinforce it. Everywhere you turned, people were talking about witches. The church, the courts, and even the king was talking about witches. Before long, witchcraft became the thing that was on everyone's mind. Imagine walking into a tavern, a church gathering, a town meeting. Chances are, in and amongst the conversations about crop prices, trade, political disputes, wherever you went, they were talking about witches too, those who had been accused, those who might be next, whether the threat was growing. When everybody was focused on the same threat, other concerns began to fade into the background. They began to receive a lot less attention anyway. Nobody was questioning the government or their economy anymore. Their attention was turned towards the hidden enemies they saw as responsible for all the rest. Witches were the root of all the problems. Everybody loves a good scapegoat during a crisis, especially politicians. And while ordinary people were worried about witches, local authorities benefited. Property belonging to witches could be seized, and that directly benefited local elites. Additionally, courts received more authority, making prosecutions easier to justify and reinforcing loyalty to the crown. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean every official was acting out of greed. Many genuinely believed that they were protecting society. But incentives have a way of shaping behavior, even when people don't realize it. That's something we see throughout history, even today. The biggest benefit for James may have been the legitimacy. By publicly fighting what he described as demonic forces, James was cultivating the image of a righteous Christian ruler chosen by God to defend the people. That mattered, especially because the English throne was looming in the background. When Queen Elizabeth I died without any direct heirs, James was ultimately chosen. He became King James I of England, uniting the crowns of Scotland and England under a single monarch. Now, I'm not suggesting witch hunting alone put him on the English throne. History is rarely that simple, and he was a good choice anyway. But the reputation he built as a defender of Protestant Christianity set him apart from any other potential successors in the running. No other royal could have measured up to compete with that. And with the English crown came greater influence, wealth, and power. Fear can be expensive, not always in money, sometimes in human lives, freedom, trust. But some people gain through fear. There's always a cost that someone's got to pay. While James didn't personally financially profit in the sense of directly filling his pockets during the witch trials, it did reinforce his image, supporting the power structure that ultimately elevated him to one of the most powerful thrones in Europe. That leaves us with a question that's relevant just as much today as it was centuries ago. When a leader encourages fear, who pays the price? If you enjoy studying incentives behind moments in history like these, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dark Ledgers. And if you enjoyed the video you just watched, hit that like button and help the channel grow. Thanks for watching. See you next time.